Right now, someone making $150,000. On the right, a relaxed person driving an old sedan $40,000 a year could be on track to become a millionaire, while $150,000 a year is on track to go completely broke. It sounds crazy, but it is entirely true. Why? Because building wealth has almost nothing to do with how much money you make, and everything to do with a few invisible traps that keep 90% of people poor their entire lives. Most people are stuck in a relentless loop. They follow a standard order of operations. They earn a paycheck, they spend most of it to survive or upgrade their lifestyle, and they try to save whatever happens to be left. But the wealthy completely flip this equation. Today, we are going to break down the psychological and economic traps that keep people poor and the exact steps you can take to break out of them. The first reason people stay poor is heavily psychological. Being poor is incredibly expensive for your brain. Research shows that living with limited resources creates a massive cognitive load. When you are constantly worrying about unmet needs, your brain experiences persistent negative affect and stress. This chronic stress severely limits your working memory and exhausts your self-control. As a result, when people are exhausted by financial pressure, they shift away from deliberative, long-term planning and rely on intuitive, impulsive decision-making. This leads to what economists call time discounting, choosing smaller, immediate rewards that provide instant relief rather than waiting for larger, delayed rewards that build long-term wealth. You aren't making bad choices because you lack intelligence. You are making them because financial scarcity fundamentally hijacks your brain's executive functions. This cognitive trap is compounded by a systemic one perfectly summarized by author Terry Pratchett in his famous Boots Theory. The theory goes like this: a rich person can afford a really good pair of 50 leather boots that will last them for 10 years, but a poor 10 pair of cheap boots that leak and wear out after a season or two. Over a decade, the poor person spends $100 constantly replacing cheap boots, and they 7 still have wet feet, while the rich person spent half as much and stayed dry. This is the literal cost of poverty. When you are poor, you are constrained by credit and liquidity, forcing you into expensive, short-term survival strategies. And if you are born into this, it's hard to escape. In fact, studies on intergenerational wealth show that inheritances account for at least half of the wealth correlation between parents and children, while earnings and education only account for about a quarter. What if you manage to start earning more? Why do so many middle and high-income earners still end up broke? 2 words: lifestyle creep. Every time someone gets a raise or a bonus, their spending grows just as fast, or sometimes faster. The $6 coffee becomes a daily rite, the cheap gym becomes a boutique studio, and the modest apartment is swapped for a luxury rental. This happens because of a psychological force called hedonic adaptation 14. When you upgrade your lifestyle, you get a short burst of excitement, but you quickly get used to it. Your happiness resets to where it started, but your living costs remain permanently higher. Add in social media, where you are constantly comparing yourself to the curated highlight reels of others, and you fall right into the "I deserve this" trap. You feel entitled to reward your hard work, but you are quietly dismantling your future wealth. So how do the wealthy actually build wealth? They flip the order of operations. They earn, they save and invest first, and then they spend whatever is left. They rigorously protect the gap between what they earn and what they spend. Instead of upgrading their cars and homes the minute they get a raise, they live below their means and let that gap grow. Then, they put that gap to work using the magic of compound interest. If you invest just $300 a month starting at age 25 at an 8% return, you'll have over $1 million by age 65. But if you wait until you are 35, you'll have less than half of that. The wealthy don't just work for their money, they make their money work for them by buying assets like low-cost index funds, real estate, and businesses. For the ultra-poor, escaping the trap sometimes requires a big push or a substantial one-off asset transfer to cross the critical wealth threshold. But for everyone else, staying poor is often the result of invisible psychological patterns and a lack of basic financial literacy. If you want to break the cycle, you need to track your money, automate your investments the moment you get paid, and ruthlessly avoid lifestyle creep. You don't need to be an expert in everything. Just learn one investment vehicle well and start today. What is the first step you are going to take this week to widen your gap? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.